Medieval Chronicles presents, in the vast tapestry of medieval literature woven with battles, saints, and legendary kings, one tale stands apart. Not for its violence, nor for its political intrigue, but for something far rarer in the Middle Ages. A love so powerful that it defied empires' faiths and the rigid borders that shaped the medieval world. This is the story of Floire and Blancheflor, forbidden romance born at the crossroads of cultures, raised under the shadow of royal ambition, and carried across kingdoms by courage, devotion, and destiny. It begins in a world where the Mediterranean was not a boundary, but a bridge, a place where Muslim courts, Christian kingdoms, merchants, scholars, and travelers mingled in fragile but constant exchange. In this space of coexistence and tension, two children were born whose lives would intertwine in ways no one could have predicted. Floire, the son of a powerful Muslim king, entered the world surrounded by wealth, silk, and ceremony. His birth was celebrated with feasts and blessings, destined to continue his father's dynasty. Blancheflor, by contrast, came from Christian lineage. Her family swept into the Muslim kingdom through war, diplomacy, or trade, depending on the version of the tale. But fate, that invisible architect, brought her into the royal household. And there, in the palace where cultures collided and faiths coexisted uneasily, the children met. They grew up side by side, playing in the gardens, sharing lessons, exchanging stories. Their bond was effortless, so natural that no one saw a danger in it at first. But as they grew older, something deeper blossomed between them. What had begun as childhood affection transformed into devotion, loyalty, and the first sparks of a love impossible to ignore. Yet, in a medieval world built on alliances, lineage, and strategic marriages, love, especially between a Christian girl and a Muslim prince, was a dangerous luxury. Rumors began to whisper through the palace halls. Servants spoke of their closeness. Advisors warned the king that Blancheflor's presence threatened Floire's destiny, and political pressure mounted. How could a future ruler be tied to a foreign girl of another faith, with no noble blood and no purpose in court? The king, wary of scandal and fearful for his son's future, made a cold and calculated decision. He ordered Blancheflor to be sent away, but not just away. She was secretly sold to merchant sand, from there transported across the sea to a distant land. Her destination, the lavish but perilous court of a powerful emir, where she would be placed in his harem. To the king, it was the perfect solution. She would vanish into a world from which no one returned, while the boy would be told she had died. When the news reached Floire, he was told that Blancheflor was gone. Forever grief shattered him. He refused to eat, refused to sleep, refused to accept that the girl who had been part of his soul was gone. And soon the truth slipped through the cracks of the carefully constructed lie. Blancheflor was alive, and she was now a prisoner far beyond the borders of his father's kingdom, Floire's. Grief turned to resolve. No political pressure, no royal command, no threat of punishment could stop him. He made a vow to find Blancheflor, no matter what land she had been taken to, no matter what dangers awaited him. And so began one of medieval literature's most iconic rescue journeys. Floire left the palace in disguise, exchanging the silks of royalty for the humble clothes of a traveler. With a small purse of coins' only resource, he crossed borders, deserts, and seas. He relied on the kindness of strangers, on merchants who offered guidance, on pilgrims who told stories of far-off courts. With every new land, he asked the same question. Have you heard of a maiden named Blancheflor? Many had stories of her beauty and gentleness, had traveled faster than Floire, but with each new sighting, he learned she was always farther ahead, like a star he could see but not reach. Finally, he arrived at the kingdom of the Emir of Babylon, the man who had purchased Blancheflor. This emir was known for his wealth, his power, and above all, the vast tower he had built to guard the women of his court. A tower so heavily protected that even the wind could barely pass its walls without permission. To enter the emir's kingdom was nearly impossible. But Floire was driven not by strategy nor diplomacy, but by love, and love, in medieval stories, often finds allies where reason finds none. He befriended guards, humbled himself before gatekeepers, and even outwitted merchants who tried to deceive him. His courage and the sincerity of his mission won over those who normally trusted no one. And eventually, with cleverness and the help of sympathetic servants, Floire found a way inside the tower. But the tower was a labyrinthine maze of chambers, locked doors, guards, and secrets. Finding Blancheflor seemed impossible, until one evening he heard a familiar sound. A voice, a soft, trembling voice, singing a melody they used to share as children. The moment the two lovers reunited is one of the most emotional scenes in medieval literature. Blancheflor, believing Floire lost forever, could hardly believe her eyes. Floire, after crossing the world to find her, fell to his knees, not in weakness, but in overwhelming relief. Their embrace was not simply romantic, it was an act of defiance, a declaration that every barrier placed between them had been broken. But their joy was brief. The emir, discovering the intrusion, ordered the lovers to be captured and brought before him, and for the first time, Floire and Blancheflor stood together before the power that had separated them. The emir was furious, humiliated that a foreign prince had infiltrated his most protected tower. He demanded to know how Floire had entered, how he had avoided detection, and why he had come. Floire answered with only one truth: he had come for Blancheflor and would rather die than leave without her. The emir, stunned by the young man's devotion, faced an unexpected dilemma. Executing Floire was simple, but the sincerity of the Princess Levand, the courage it took to reach the tower, moved even a hardened ruler. Depending on the version of the tale, the emir responds in two ways. In one, he chooses mercy, recognizing that love this powerful cannot be owned or contained. In another, he allows the lovers to depart only after a series of trials. But in all versions, the conclusion is the same. Floire and Blancheflor are freed. The journey back to Floire's homeland was long and filled with uncertainties, but this time they traveled together, and when they returned, the shock of their return forced the king to face a truth he had long denied. His son was no longer the boy he once knew. He was now a man shaped by courage, sacrifice, and devotion, qualities far more valuable than any political alliance. The king, moved by the transformation and recognizing the endurance of their bond, finally gave his blessing. Floire and Blancheflor were married, with grand celebration uniting not only two hearts, but symbolically bridging the divide between cultures and faiths. And in the years that followed, the lovers became rulers governing with justice, compassion, and the wisdom earned through suffering and perseverance. In medieval Europe, where romances often ended in tragedy, Floire and Blancheflor offered a rare and revolutionary message. Love could triumph not only over personal obstacles, but over the divide between worlds. It was a story that resonated deeply across medieval courts, carried by troubadours from castle to castle, sung in languages ranging from Arabic to Old French, and retold by generations who understood the powerful truth at its core, that love, true, unwavering, sacrificial love, has the power to cross borders sharper than any sword, higher than any wall, and more unyielding than any law. And even in the Middle Ages, a world of rigid faith, strict hierarchy, and unforgiving politics, there existed a legend where two young hearts broke every rule written against them. This is why the story of Floire and Blancheflor survived long after the kingdoms that shaped it vanished. Not because it was realistic, but because it reminded listeners of a possibility few dared imagine, that even in the harshest of worlds, even in a time divided by religion and power, love could still win.